America, my name is Osei-Frimpong. Today we're going to go talk about some Nazis. And when I say talk about some Nazis, we're going to talk about Walter Darre's A New Nobility and A New Nobility of Blood and Soil. I think it's important for us to have this conversation because I think this is where America's going. We're going to go full Nazi because the only thing keeping the Nazis at bay are these feckless liberals, and it looks worse than Weimar Germany to me. And also the problems of Weimar Germany and the feckless liberals have not been addressed, which makes, like, in these United States, the progression to equality of bad National Socialism, especially since the fact that we never actually addressed not only the problems of market society and degradation that characterized Weimar Germany, but also we've never addressed eugenics in the United States, right? So all of the preconditions for a Nazi takeover are here in the United States. And we need to actually understand the arguments so that when it happens, we're not taken unawares, and that we, black people, can do better than the Jews in expelling the more noxious arguments and do better than the Germans in getting rid of the determinants that made those noxious arguments so compelling. All right. So now that I've given, I think, an appropriate disclaimer that says I do not believe everything that I'm going to attribute to Darre. I think I'm going to try to attribute all of the arguments in the right way and the most compelling ones to Darre, and then kind of suggest ways to get around this without completely delegitimizing his concerns. Because if you delegitimize his concerns, that's how you end up with a Nazi America, right? So first things first, he says a leadership class in society just emerges. A leadership class is going to emerge. Stop trying to fight against the idea of leadership. A leadership class just emerges. Now, I think you can get around this by training everyone to be leaders in their time, in their moment, and that everyone needs to be, insofar as they need to at least lead their family in a responsible way, with the help of society. But he says that there are natural, biologically determined human, hereditary human inequalities. Now, this is his argument. I say there may be, but those might be irrelevant for a self-governing society. But he says that there are inequalities that are hereditary, and there's going to be a leadership class in society. So the best thing is to have a leadership class that emerges of society for the good of society, for the sake of society, as opposed to a leadership class that exists to secure itself and extort from society. Arguably, you want a leadership class the way Zionists consider Israel, as opposed to the way Zionists consider the United States. Right. So you are like that's going to be the juxtaposition. So how do you get a leadership class that is one with, emerges out of, and sustains the unity of the people? Well, he's like, well, you take the best people and you have them breed with each other. You have families. You have families of the best, and since these are hereditary traits, you have families of the best, and you just have them intermingle, and that way you'll get your leadership class that is the best for the people, right? And that's going to be problematic for a few different reasons. But his idea is that since these traits are hereditarily determined, you can kind of breed them out. But since we don't, and he admits that, like, the tests and the scientific method for determining the exact determinants and biological characteristics of these, the best, is 300 years away. So now we're just going to have to eyeball it and just kind of have the best families get together and breed with each other. And that way you'll have a leadership class of the people. Right? So that's kind of, I think, an appropriate, but I think a little bit vulgar way to solve the leadership problem in the United States. But he says that will be of the people, and that it's a real problem, right? So what makes these people the best is that they're going to actually prove by achievement to be the best sons of the patriarch of the family of the previous generation, right? So the best sons have to prove themselves. It's like the Godfather notion of patriarchy, where it doesn't necessarily go to Fredo, and it doesn't necessarily go to Sonny. It goes to Michael because Michael's the best, right? So you have to prove yourself through achievement. It's not just because you're the oldest. You have to prove yourself through achievement, and you get the whole thing. You get the whole hearth, you get the whole house, you get everything if you're the best son, right? And what he does here is he contrasts this with Christianity as a Roman invasion, which doesn't orient society towards trying to suss out and promote the best of the ruling class in order to govern society as a whole. Rather, it puts the most important moral aspect of your being away from trying to prove yourself through achievement in society, but in getting to heaven, right? Faith in Jesus. And he says that that's a problem that atomizes society in a way that undermines family. It is kind of weird that in Christianity you don't go to heaven with your family. I think it'd be weird if I didn't have my family in heaven. What kind of happiest world would it be if, like, I don't get to hang out with my kids and my grandkids and all of that stuff? I like that would be strange that's not internal to the idea of heaven. And then, like, how tall am I going to be? Heaven's got a lot of problems, right? But the problem for Darre, the problem is that it abstracts from family relations, and like your divinity is in your blood as being related to, the divinity, and that being represented by like the hearth in your house. So like it's in a place. You have a line. We need to think vertically in terms of you were given this responsibility in this place to preside over these people for the good of their people, and long lines have been designed in order to ensure your competence in this family to do so, right? So that's Darre's notion of like the German ideology that was kind of upset by Roman Christianity is what he saw, right? And there are some internal problems with that, especially with inheritance law. That on one hand, inheritance law, you divide up the property among the kids, in which case nobody has enough to actually sustain themselves, and so they end up selling it, and that's a great way to break apart a people, right? To keep dividing up inheritance smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller, so that none of it's actually independent, and your people are now like floating with the winds. Or you do a real inheritance where you give it to, the best or the oldest, but then that person has to do something nice to all the other people, so they take out loans on it, and then they take out loans in a way that undermine the property to begin with. So they take out loans, and then this is how this goes into anti-Semitism. Who gives out the loans? So there's one thing. So inheritance is always a problem with vertical thinking. So you just have to work that out before, or you have to make enough money so that everybody gets enough, so that they have it. They have an independent store. They have enough so that they can secure their independence without selling it, or taking out loans on it. All right. So, but that's not really sustainable. So, also with this liberalization, he says this is why you're going to get decreased birth rates with this kind of liberalization and these inheritance problems. I thought that was actually, these same kind of people now talk about decreased birth rates, and this might be an actual issue that you need to actually address, right? So how do we think about inheritance in a way that doesn't lead to kind of a dispersion and diffuse quality in caring for both the land and the people that surround the land? That's a real question. That's a real question. We can't let the market determine, and he says right there, we can't let the market determine it, because these people weren't necessarily picked because they were the best at making money. They were picked because they were the best at sustaining the community, what the community needs. And this kind of vague, more hand-wavy way he hasn't gone into, but yeah, there was kind of an ideological purity and purpose, and not necessarily indexed to who could make the most amount of money. Right. So market life is only one aspect of family life, but the real aspect of family life is sustaining the unity of both the property and also working with others in the community to sustain all of their families. And like Aristotle, Darre believes that communities are just networks of good families, networks of big families. And that's against the idea that people are fundamentally individual and don't really have responsibilities vertically to their ancestors or to their great-grandchildren. And he says like a more syncretic notion of, I don't think he uses the word syncretic, more syncretic notion of patriarchy that just worries about the person's relationship to everyone around them in that moment in time, not a vertical relationship that understands themselves as custodians of the land to the next generation. So if you sell the land, that's actually like not only a huge deal, it's a huge failure. And I actually think that that's important. We need to start thinking about selling the family house as a huge failure. For example, my dad died about 5 years ago. I just gave the house to my sister. My thinking was, my mom made a little bit of mistake by divorcing him, and she could have used the dad, and she would have been better off with the dad. And so I'll just give her my dad's condo in LA, and that will kind of make up for my mom screwing that up. That was my thinking for it, and I stand by it because I in some ways I am a little bit more put together than she is. In some ways I'm not, and that's how I solve the inheritance problem. But the inheritance problem is a real problem. The idea that you just split it down the middle isn't exactly appropriate any more than like 50-50 custody in a divorce is necessarily appropriate. Sometimes you have to be a little bit more forgiving about it. Just more in line with what the ancestors would have wanted about it. So she got my dad's condo, and I just kind of got what I got. All right, so but think about this. Think about this inheritance as a problem. Also think about the idea that you should be able to like stay in a place across generations. If you don't want to, that's one thing, but you shouldn't be forced out of your place. He, like Rousseau, Darre, like Rousseau, like honors the country life, and maybe Jefferson too. The gentleman farmer is like the highest life, but the gentleman farmer isn't necessarily trying to make a ton of surplus money. They're trying to sustain their community in a different kind of way. Right? So, vertical thinking, the family as the basic unit of society, the vertical family as the basic and holiest unit of society, and then networked vertical families dealing with each other, and then trying to figure out how the most competent, as proven by achievement, members of those networked families like marry each other, and that becomes your class, and they become the self-governing class that is still of the people. That is of the people. I would have said another Godfather reference, but I think Michael ends up killing Fredo. And I always like to say, even Fredo wants Michael to be. Even Fredo and Sonny appreciate Michael, but I don't think good things happen to either of those sons, if I remember correctly. Does I think Michael kills Fredo, right? Because Fredo tried to kill Michael, and then that kind of screws up. I'm going to go to chat for this, right? So, someone says, thank God for my channel, thank God for my channel, thank God for my channel. Well, yes, I try to do the Lord's work. I'm here trying to do the Lord's work while my kids are eating, and you should go to www.funkyacademic.com, kick in $5, $15, or $50 a month, and I'll continue. I'll continue because you're not going to get this anywhere else. No black guy's going to talk about this book in these times, The New Nobility of Blood and Soil by Darre, and actually give you a good argument. They're just going to say racist, racist, racist. Yes, he is a huge racist, but also he's identifying problems with market society and Marxism and like all of these other kind of non-racist ideologies that atomize us and don't give us a sense of place or meaning or nationhood. And if you want reparations for you as a Black American, we need to actually get clear about what it means to be a Black American, what it means to be an American. That means we need to talk about borders and people and like vertical responsibilities, vertical benefits, and also vertical debts, because what we're talking about is vertical debt. So you need to get nationalist. We just got to be able to get nationalist without talking. We ought to be able to get nationalist without, the camps. And I don't mean metaphorical camps. I mean the actual camps. So let's talk about a leadership class has to emerge. A leadership class has to emerge. A leadership class should emerge, either emerges from the people for the sake of the unification of the people and of the people, or that leadership class is going to just try to like exploit whatever it can from the people for itself, right? So we want the first, right? And so that second thing, he argues, is going to be attacked by more market influences, because the leadership that emerges from the people, for the people, might not be most profitable. It might be cheaper to, it might be cheaper to get cheap stuff from China, right? It might be cheaper to undermine your domestic production capacity. It might be cheaper to do all sorts of things, and it might be more efficacious for the GDP to run over families. And I'll be honest, this all comes down to the idea that liberals and Christians are actually really bad at family. I say this, Christians are really bad at family. Yeah, relatively bad, because they can't account for how families sustain ties across generations. It's all about your personal relationship with Jesus. But what is your family's responsibility to the community and to each other outside of securing that personal relationship with Jesus? Do you need to read to them and teach them math? I'm going to do a different video on how we need to understand family values as like also including literacy and numeracy. One, this is how we get beat by the Jews. Because, we have to understand that the most important thing isn't necessarily securing a personal relationship with Jesus, but it's also making your kid effective in this world, insofar as they are literate and they are numerate. And your family time should not just be spent, playing games or whatever. It should also be spent like drilling math tables, like teaching punctuation. Like I said, once I log off here, I got to go up. This is Thanksgiving break, but I'm going to go upstairs and we're going to work on semicolons and what they're for and how they set up contrasts and what is an independent and dependent clause, right? It's going to take a few times, but the kids are going to get it. This is day 2. I'm talking about semicolons. And you know what? My kids, then when they go out into the real world, or the outside of this house, the real world, the other world that's outside of this house, are going to end up doing better than your kids, because you're not doing this. So I want you to do this so that like our kids can work together. Okay? I'm just telling you. Family values includes literacy and numeracy as much as it includes like, that abstract relationship to a divine. So Darre says with the old Germans, you don't get an abstract relationship to a divine. You get a more concrete relationship through the blood of competence and community competence that was selected through hereditary traits for community competence. And so you're supposed to confirm it, not with taking tests on the Bible, but confirm it through your community acts. And that's how you get chosen as the favored son and the next line of the family dynasty. Think in terms of dynasties. Now, I do honestly think in terms of dynasties. I have a running list of things, and it's clearly marked my will. I have a running list of things that people of my line need to do with their kids in order to sustain the dynasty, and also against more pernicious aspects of civil society. One is not sell this house. Do not sell this house. Do not sell the family house. Two, Yeah, so let's keep going with Darre. So he argues against Marxism because he says that abstracts from the family as an important unit, as a specialized unit that should organize society, and family leadership that emerges from good families as the principle of organizing society, not necessarily like the horde in general, like some vulgar utilitarian calculus. We should actually calibrate our society to what produces the best of the best families. And since I'm more of a democratic sensibility, I think we should calibrate our society as in terms of what produces the best families, like in general, and treat every family as if they're an elite family. And we should organize families, and not necessarily what makes them the richest, what makes individuals the richest, but what creates the best family units, because those family units then can establish a verticality to themselves, for themselves, and also are good people to network with in a better society. So one of the reasons I do this show is I want to grow your capacity to not screw up your family, so that then your kids can work with my kids and we can build a better world. So if you appreciate what I'm doing, go to www.funkyacademics.com, give a super chat, and I'll read it out and I'll deal with your question. And what else do you need to know about this first bit, right? The importance of family, the importance of divinity coming through family as being realized by family property and being confirmed by the acts of the best son in each generation. And that's the person who then gets unilateral access to, becomes the warder of the hearth, the warder, not governor, steward, the steward of the hearth. But it needs to be confirmed through actions and competence. And that's different from being confirmed through your commitment to Jesus Christ. Right? So he's kind of thinking about those kinds of issues, and how if we forget about the family and we become atomized, we'll end up degrading ourselves as a people. We'll just be confused as a people, because he argues, people will just be marrying willy-nilly, and the best of us will just be degraded. It'll just keep getting stamped on and cut, and there will be no best of us, and then we'll end up giving ourselves over to the market through ignorance. That's his argument. I do think that families need special consideration, and you need to understand and expand what's considered family values, and the idea that you can't just have a personal relationship with an abstract God. You need to actually prove competence in this world as a family value. So your family shouldn't just spiritually nurture you to be a good Christian insofar as it's a personal relationship with Jesus. Your family should spiritually nurture you to be a good Christian insofar as it's made you a competent human and a competent family member. And that means competent for and improving in your concern for the community. Right? If you're going to be a Christian at all. Like, that's a matter. And it's not just faith versus works, because works still is not about efficacy. A lot of people are works Christians, but they don't really grade the quality of their work based on whether it worked. They're just thinking, well, I went to a soup kitchen and I do all these nice things. That means I'm a good Christian and I have faith in Jesus. Yeah, but all the nice things you do you're not really serious about making sure that they work. It's like all these white teachers, all these white lady teachers especially, who like collect checks not teaching black kids how to read. I'd feel really some sort of way about, I'm just not built to collect a check not doing my job in that way. I think it's just a meaningless, it's a whole life of a sham. Your whole life is a sham. A lot of pastors are like this too, but their whole life is a sham, and they collect money and they don't actually do the thing they're supposed to do. And yet the community depends on them. Therapists, I guess, maybe the same way. All these things that are increasingly feminized. It's not getting better. It's just not getting better in terms of accountability. So what Darre is talking about is we need actual acknowledge and respect, people who can achieve things that we want achieved, like the unity of the community, and then have them mate with each other. Now, I think you can change that a little bit to just think about not necessarily biological heredity, but we do need cultural checks on what counts as families, and which is why I talk about family values on the show. A lot of like red pill guys just talk about how to get laid, and their answers are always some form of just go out and get rich and then buy some mercenary woman. No, it needs to be deeper than that. You need to actually cultivate a community where good people recognize good people and know what it is to be a good person, and still be effective. You might not get a supermodel that way, but I think you'll get a good person, and you don't have to worry about a divorce because this good person will know like what the family's for, as opposed to someone who's just with you in the money, and then like the market takes a downturn, or you, yeah. A lot of divorce happens that way. Or they get bored. they get access to figure out a way how they can get your money without you, and then they'll get rid of you because they were only with you for your money anyway. So like the gold digger variety of how to get lucky is really kind of a degradation, and that's going to lead to this resurgence of Nazism, which I think is going to happen. And we just need to be prepared for it ideologically, because, I think the whites have proven that they're not. So when it comes, we need to be prepared for it ideologically and save them from themselves. Now, themselves are on both sides. They're also the market liberals and the Marxists who don't respect families. But the blood and soil people do respect families, but they have some dicey understandings of genetic inheritance and what that means for a self-governing nation. So we need to be picky about culture. We need to actually identify and uplift good cultural ticks. I don't think they're biologically determined, and even if they are, it might not be relevant in a self-governing nation. See, I'm of the fan that I don't think I am the smartest. I am not of the talented 10th of 100th. I'm just a regular guy. And you're listening to me because it turns out regular guys can do good work and help you not screw up your life. Regular guys are people too. And I think America is built on the idea that people like me can actually contribute to the society. People who aren't the smartest, but they actually can contribute to society and need to be able to contribute to society. And the people who are the smartest sometimes screw things up because they get enamored with their own smarts. So, I misspell words and forget articles every now and then, but I think society needs folks like me, and I think we can mass produce people like me because, like I said, I'm not brilliant or anything like that. So someone says regular guys don't read. All right, so when I say I'm regular, that means I'm biologically regular. I got weak eyes. I got that Kareem/Clyde Drexler hair pattern going on. I'm 5'9". I'm like average everything. Culturally, I'm above average. Culturally, I think I'm above average, which is why I'm here. But that's all a matter of culture. So, which is why the biological stuff doesn't really land with me because, I've been to all the smart places and I've seen so many smarter people make horrible decisions in so many different aspects of their lives that it's not the smarties who will save us. It's not the smarties who will save us. So, what do you need to know? Think vertically. Family has a special consideration. You're not supposed to sacrifice all of your work and time and labor for the horde. You need to think in terms of what it means to be a good family member and to think of what it means to be a good parent is to raise effective kids, not just holy ones or nice ones, effective kids. So you should be reading and teaching your kids how to spell and punctuate and do math and drilling those. Like good parenting looks like multiplication tables. Good parenting looks like multiplication table, maybe more than dishes. like I'm on, like these things matter. These things matter. So we need to redefine family values to build good vertical families and then uplift those who actually do it right. And then set those people up with your kids, and then they'll kind of change the culture in that way, in a healthy way. And not just be given to market society and assume that the market will raise your kids or the market will decide what you should do to your inheritance. What else do you know? Take care of your line have a plan for your line. Don't sell the family house. Figure out a way to build where you're at. Think inheritance, worry about inheritance in a real way. Be very suspicious of Christianity that doesn't expect competence in the world and achievement in the world, and just says, well, you give your heart to Christ, and if you try to do good, it doesn't really matter if you're actually effective. Be wary of that kind of Christianity that abstracts from these kinds of more muscular relations. Also, he goes on a little rant about how the old Germanic titles are different than the Romanized titles, because Romanized titles had to do with like efficiency and economic utility. For example, I didn't know that account is called account because they were the tax collectors. They counted stuff. They were the accountants. So that's hilarious. I found it hilarious. I was giggling last night. I didn't know that counts were counts. So it's more like the count from Sesame Street than count than like, a king. That's hilarious. These titles come from their role in economic utility. These are the Romanized ones, the ones that he wants to fight against. He's like, we need a new set of titles that go with the blood. You're tied to this land, not just your ability to work for the state abstracted from this family. So we need titles that actually go to the family. So he introduces another sort of title. But I thought that was funny. Turns out to be a count means that you come from tax collectors. Just like to be a smith means that you come from blacksmiths and stuff like that. All right. Thank you for your time. And I'm going to go hang out with the kids now. Do the last of the semicolon bit. And I will talk to you another time. Well, I'll probably give a part 2 of Blood and Soil and talk about why family values need to include more terrestrial things and terrestrial relationships. All right. Take care.